Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla TV, here to talk to you today about the AirHawk Dual Sport Seat Pad. You should be looking into an AirHawk Dual Sport Seat Pad if you're looking to make your motorcycle a little bit more comfortable to ride, but you're not willing to plunk down enough money for an entire aftermarket saddle, or perhaps you're in the boat where they don't make an aftermarket saddle for your bike and you're kind of stuck with your stock offering. Now these are currently being made, as the name implies, for dual sports, but I don't think most of you should really lock into that dual sport fitment. These are 11.5 by 11, so really just keep the measurement in mind. There's no reason at all you can't use one of these on another type of bike, a dirt bike or a street bike or a cruiser. It doesn't really matter. As long as this fits on there and it fits your keister, that's really what you should go by. Installation on these is fairly simple. I'm going to call it a one bearder on our BSD, our beard scale of difficulty. You don't really need much in the way of tools unless you're going to remove your seat, and even that's not so hard. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So the AirHawk seat pad really is fairly self-explanatory. It's a seat pad. It's meant to make you a little bit more comfortable on your motorcycle. These are kind of interesting. There's both an exterior padded section on here and then an internal pad section too. So let's work from the outside, the cover, on in, and we'll talk about what this may or may not do for you. So the first thing to notice here, this 3D mesh fabric here, it actually has a little bit of structure to it, and that's specifically so air can pass through and around this fabric. Those of you who have spent long miles on a bike pouring sweat into a saddle know that it gets a little bit icky if you're sitting there right with your skin up against something like vinyl or leather. So having this air space between you and your saddle, again, allows some air to get through there, keeps you feeling fresh. The other thing to note too is this ridge down the center. Now this is more than just good looking and an offsetting color. This also is inset just a little bit, so it gives you, again, a little bit of airflow down the perennial region. Again, for those of you guys who are on a bike for a real long time, going to keep that airflow going. It really does make for a happy ride. Flipping over on the cover, this material on the seat side of things is fairly soft, but it is rubberized. So that really does two things. First, it helps this thing latch into your saddle. It kind of bites down on it without sliding around, doesn't give you an uncomfortable feeling. But the nice part about this stuff being so soft and not being heavily textured is it's not going to damage your either factory saddle or aftermarket saddle, whatever it is you're putting this on top of. So let's break this puppy open. We'll talk about the guts here. Now getting to the inside of this really is pretty simple. As you can see, I just unzipped this pouch and you can now see the air bladder. And this is really the thing that makes the AirHawk special. You can see here, there's just this little valve here. This can be filled, believe it or not, by mouth. You don't need a special pump. You can fill these on the road. It's really easy to get air into or out of here. And you can hear here, I'm just gonna squeeze this down, get some air out of it. It's very simple to add and remove air to this. What most folks will do when they're setting one of these up is typically fill it up, but a lot of people tend to overfill. So one of the things I'd recommend you're doing when you're trying this out, kind of overfill maybe just a little bit, jump on there, see how it feels, and then experiment by letting the air pressure down. You want the air pressure pretty low in order to be most comfortable. Ideally, you're gonna have just enough air in here to elevate you up off the seat a little bit. A lot of people don't realize it, but that's really not very much pressure at all. Just a couple pounds really ought to do you. So let's talk about installation on these. Really is very simple. It's a seat pad. You're not doing any major surgery to get this onto your motorcycle. There's a couple different ways to install these for a couple different style bikes. AirHawk breaks it down really into bikes with seats that are easy to remove and seats that aren't. Either way, they have a pretty decent way of attaching these. There's just some straps that are included. They're elastic, they're adjustable. It's pretty simple to get one of these onto your bike. If you can pop your seat off, it gives you a couple more options as far as how you actually want to hold this thing in place. But for the most part, it's not really that critical because you're actually sitting on top of this. It would be very hard for this thing to actually move around between that grippy bottom coating and your weight pinning it down onto the seat. So when it comes right down to it, I think the AirHawk, not really for me. I am a huge proponent of very firm seats. This is the exact opposite. So if you have a seat that's very hard, the AirHawk might be the way to fly. But this is going to be a really great option, again, for those of you who don't want to plop down all that money onto an aftermarket seat, or those of you who are having trouble finding an aftermarket seat that might be a little bit more comfortable for you. Now, my opinion is not the only game in town. Click that info button, check out what some riders who are already rocking an AirHawk Dual Sport seat pad on their bike have to say about it. If you've got some questions that I didn't get to, get in touch with one of our gear geeks, cs@revzilla.com, or you can give us a jingle on the telling bone, 877-792-9455. I'm Lemmy, I'm out of here.